Your attention is territory. If anyone can interrupt it, occupy it, or redirect it whenever they please, then it does not fully belong to you yet. You can call yourself disciplined. You can say you are focused because you do not always argue, explain, or show emotion. But if one delayed reply can pull your mind away from your work, if one subtle criticism can change your breathing, then something outside you still holds keys to your command center. Most people do not lose command in one dramatic failure. They bleed it out through small openings. A quick check of the phone, a defensive response, a conversation replaying in the back of the mind while the real work sits untouched. Every time that happens, the world learns where your gates are weak. What we are building here is focus, detachment, and discipline around one ruthless principle: controlled access. Who gets to enter your mind? What gets to touch your mood? When pressure is allowed to interrupt your timing, Machiavelli would not ask if a city felt strong. He would ask if the gates were guarded, because an unguarded city does not need to be conquered. It only needs to be walked into. And the most dangerous gate is the one you defend by telling yourself you are just staying aware. Because once everything is allowed to matter, nothing truly belongs to you. Let us slow down and look at the exact anatomy of a hijacked mind. What is actually happening when one small notification can ruin your entire morning? You wake up with real intention. The house is quiet. The desk is clear. The screen lights up in front of you, and for a moment, there is order. You know what needs to be done. You know what kind of day you are trying to build. Your mind is not yet crowded. The gates are still closed. Then the phone vibrates. A message arrives from a peer, a client, a partner, a family member, or someone whose opinion still has too much access to your nervous system. It is not an open attack. It is not a screaming insult. It is quieter than that. A subtle question, a passive-aggressive line, a small challenge about a decision you made yesterday. Just enough accusation to create doubt, just enough ambiguity to make you start guessing their real motive. And this is where the breach begins. You tell yourself you are just staying informed. You tell yourself you will read it, process it for 10 seconds, and return to the work. But the moment your eyes scan the message, something shifts in the body. Your jaw tightens, your chest gets warmer, your breathing changes. The work in front of you, the mission you promised yourself you would execute, starts fading into the background. That message is no longer just a few words on a screen. It has built a courtroom inside your head, and suddenly, you are the one on trial. You start interrogating the text. Why did they say it like that? What do they really mean? If I ignore this, do I look weak? If I answer too quickly, do I look desperate? If I answer too coldly, do I make it worse? You start typing a response. 3 sentences appear. You delete them because they sound too defensive. You type 2 more, trying to sound calm. But you can feel the performance in your own words. The work is still on the desk. The day is still young. But the command is gone. This is the quiet humiliation of a hijacked mind. No one physically stopped you. No one forced you away from your mission. You surrendered the territory willingly because the gate was unguarded. You are sitting in your chair, but your nervous system is trapped inside a digital thread, negotiating with someone who is not even in the room. And when this happens enough times, life begins to organize itself around interruption. You do not notice it at first. You still look busy. You still have goals. You still tell yourself you are serious. But your attention keeps being leased out in small pieces to whatever can create enough emotional friction. A message, a tone, a look, a comment, a comparison, a memory. A person who has not earned the right to stand anywhere near your command center. The hidden mechanism is brutal, but simple. Attention is the doorway, but emotion is the handle behind it. Once something successfully occupies your attention, it does not need to defeat you with superior logic. It only needs to change your internal temperature. Because the moment your emotional state changes, the quality of your decisions begins to change with it. Watch how this plays out in a physical room. A serious person walks into a high-stakes meeting. They are prepared. They know the numbers. They understand the objective. They begin presenting their position with control. Then someone at the table interrupts with a slight sigh and a dismissive question about one minor detail. It is not a full attack. It is just a needle, just enough to test the skin. Watch the amateur closely. The rhythm breaks. The posture shifts. The body leans forward too quickly. The voice gets faster. Extra data starts pouring onto the table. The minor detail gets explained far beyond what the moment required. They think they are defending credibility. But the room is no longer listening only to the data. The room is watching the anxiety. It is watching a person whose rhythm could be altered by one sigh. By the end of the exchange, they may have spoken more than anyone else, but they have not gained more authority. They have revealed the pressure point. They have shown the room what it takes to move them. That is the cost of emotional leakage. Your reaction is not just a feeling, it is a broadcast. It tells people whether you need approval, whether you fear being misunderstood, whether disrespect makes you impulsive, whether silence makes you anxious, and whether your stability can be disturbed at a discount. Emotion itself is not weakness. Anger, irritation, pressure, and discomfort are data. They tell you something has entered the perimeter. But data is not command. The disciplined person does not deny emotion. They demote it. They let it report from the field, but they refuse to let it sit on the throne and make decisions. That is the difference between feeling pressure and being governed by pressure. If one comment can change the quality of your execution, your discipline does not fully belong to you yet. It is still being negotiated by the weather outside. And once pressure learns it can change your emotional state, it will not stop there. It will move to the next vulnerability. It will try to control your timing. Once pressure learns it can change your emotional state, it moves to the next gate. Timing. This is where control becomes harder to see. The pressure does not need to make you visibly angry. It does not need to outsmart your argument. It does not even need to win the conversation. It only needs to make you move before you have chosen your position. Because whoever can rush your timing does not need to defeat your logic. They only need to make you act before your logic has fully entered the room. Urgency is one of the oldest forms of psychological capture. It says, answer now, decide now, explain now, fix this now, prove yourself now, show me you care now, show me you are not afraid now. And because most people confuse speed with strength, they obey. They react immediately and call it decisiveness. They fire back a response and call it confidence. They rush to explain and call it responsibility. But speed under external pressure is not always power. Sometimes it is obedience with better posture. Look at the physical reality of this trap. It is late at night. The room is quiet. The day is supposed to be over. Your body is trying to come down from the noise, but the phone lights up beside you. A message arrives from someone who knows how to phrase things in a way your nervous system cannot ignore. It is not a real emergency. Nobody is dying. Nothing is burning. But it carries just enough accusation, ambiguity, or emotional weight to pull your mind out of rest. You know you should wait. You know your state is not clean. You know the wiser move is to let the night pass and answer from a colder mind. But silence feels dangerous. Delay feels like losing control of the story. So you pick up the phone, you start typing. One sentence becomes two. Two becomes five. You explain your intention. You soften the edges. You defend the part of yourself that feels misread. You try to sound calm, but the message is already shaped by pressure. By the time you hit send, that response is no longer clean communication. It is proof of access. And the next morning, when the emotional fog clears, you read what you sent and feel the quiet regret. You see it clearly. You did not respond from command. You responded from pressure. That is the mechanism of urgency. Whoever controls the pace often controls the frame. If something can make you hurry, it can reduce your options. If it can reduce your options, it can shape your behavior. A rushed person becomes narrow. They miss tone. They miss proportion. They miss timing. They choose the immediate relief of doing something over the strategic strength of holding position. Relief is not strategy. Relief is often just tension, leaving the body while exposure enters the record. This is why disciplined people protect timing, like territory. They understand that not every signal deserves immediate movement. Some things need delay because delay restores proportion. The insult that feels massive at midnight becomes smaller after sleep. The accusation that feels urgent in the moment becomes manageable after the body settles. The problem that appears to demand immediate explanation often reveals itself as bait once your nervous system is calm. Time does not only pass, time exposes. It exposes whether the issue is real or theatrical. It exposes whether the other side wants resolution or reaction. It exposes whether you are acting from principle or panic. It exposes whether the situation deserves a response, a boundary, a consequence, or nothing at all. But most people never let time do this work because they are addicted to instant relief. They want the tension to end. They want the discomfort removed. They want the misunderstanding cleared before it has even been understood. So they surrender timing just to escape a feeling. That is how urgency becomes a leash, not around the neck, around the nervous system. A person who cannot sit with uncertainty will always be rushed by people who know how to create it. And this does not only happen through messages. It happens in meetings, in negotiations, in family pressure, in relationships, in public disagreement. Someone challenges your idea with an aggressive tone. Someone demands an answer before you have had time to think. Someone frames hesitation as weakness. The amateur rushes to respond because the room feels hot. The disciplined person lets the heat sit there. They pause. They let the pressure hang in the air. They answer the exact point worth answering and leave the rest untouched. That pause changes the hierarchy of the room. It signals that your timing is not for rent. It signals that you do not move simply because someone pushed. It signals that pressure must wait outside the gate until you decide whether it deserves entry. The correction is simple, but it is not easy. Install structural delay between stimulus and response. Before you answer, force the question. Is this truly urgent, or is it merely uncomfortable? Is this important, or is it just loud? Does responding right now improve my position, or does it only relieve pressure inside my chest? Is this my responsibility, or is someone trying to transfer emotional weight onto me? These questions return timing to its rightful owner. Machiavelli understood that timing determines power. A move made too early exposes intention. A move made too late loses opportunity. 9. But a move made under someone else's pressure rarely belongs to you. It belongs to the pressure. Remember this, if someone can rush your timing, they can rent your judgment. So delay becomes a weapon of clarity. You let the body settle. You let the situation reveal itself. You let urgency lose its costume. Then, if action is needed, you act cleanly, shorter, colder, more precise, with less explanation and more command. But there is a danger here. Delay can become another mask. A person can refuse to reply, hold back, stay silent, and still let the situation dominate their inner world. They can call it discipline when it is really fear. They can call it detachment when it is really obsession. And this is exactly where most people destroy the power they are trying to build. This is the trap of fake detachment. This is where many people destroy the very power they are trying to build. They understand that attention is territory. They understand that urgency can become a leash. They learn to hold back, delay the response, keep the gate closed, and stop giving pressure immediate access. For a moment, they think they understand the architecture of power. Then they make the quiet mistake that ruins everything. They start performing detachment instead of actually building it. So we have to expose the most dangerous question in this entire doctrine. Why is most detachment fake, and how does it secretly keep you controlled? Because a person can stop replying and still be emotionally owned. A person can act cold and still be internally occupied. A person can say, "I do not care," while checking the screen, replaying the situation, imagining the perfect response, and quietly measuring whether the other side has noticed their absence. That is not detachment. That is captivity with better posture. Look at the real scene. B. Someone disrespects you, delays a reply, questions your value, or leaves something unresolved just long enough to reach your nervous system. You decide you are not going to chase. You are not going to double text. You are not going to explain yourself again. From the outside, this looks controlled. You seem quiet, distant, unmoved. But then the second layer begins. You unlock the phone just to check. You look at their profile. You check whether they are active. You replay the conversation while driving. You stand under the shower, steam filling the room, and you are not really washing off the day. You are having a silent argument with someone who is not there. You are saying the lines you should have said. You are rehearsing indifference. You are trying to convince yourself that you are above it, while your entire evening is still being built around their ghost. You removed your words, but you did not remove your attention. You are silent, but you are not free. This is why fake detachment is so dangerous. It lets the ego feel disciplined, while the nervous system remains captured. You think you are winning because no one can see your reaction. But the real measurement of power is not whether you reacted in public. The real measurement is whether the situation still controls your breathing, your imagination, your mood, your timing, and your ability to execute. If it still decides the temperature of your inner world, it still has access. The hidden mechanism is absolute. Whatever remains at the center of your private attention still has jurisdiction over you. You can walk out of the room. You can stop speaking. You can delay the message. You can put the phone face down. But if your inner world is still orbiting around that person, that insult, that delay, or that unresolved tension, then it is still sitting on the throne. This is the painful mirror most people avoid. Many do not use silence to regain sovereignty. They use silence to be noticed. They want their lack of response to create anxiety. They want their absence to be felt. They want the other person to wonder, regret, chase, apologize, or finally recognize their value. But listen carefully. If your silence needs a reaction from the other side to feel successful, then your silence still belongs to them. That is not command. That is begging without sound. Real detachment has a completely different texture. It is not dramatic. It does not need a clenched jaw. It does not keep checking the scoreboard to see if the other person is suffering yet. It does not secretly build revenge fantasies in the dark. Real detachment is the moment the object loses jurisdiction. It may still exist in the world, but it no longer dictates your pace. It no longer decides whether you execute today. It no longer rents space inside your mind for free. This is the deeper turn. The goal is not to look untouched. The goal is to become difficult to occupy. Machiavelli would not be impressed by a city that paints its walls gold while leaving the gates open. That is not fortification. That is decorated vulnerability. The same is true inside you. If you delay the reply, but think about it all night, the gate is open. If you refuse to argue but replay the insult for 3 days, the gate is open. If you act calm in public but privately collapse into comparison, the gate is open. If your discipline disappears every time someone with emotional access behaves unpredictably, the gate is open. Detachment without structure is hidden dependence. It may look colder. It may sound stronger. It may impress people for a moment. But it does not free you. It only teaches you to hide the chain. So the correction is not more silence. It is conversion. You must convert detachment into movement. Once you withdraw attention from the noise, you must redirect it into execution. Do not just stop replying. Return to the work. Do not just avoid the argument. Restore your rhythm. Do not just refuse the bait. Reclaim the hour. Do not just become quiet. Become unavailable to the pattern. There is a massive difference between silence and replacement. Silence removes the noise. Replacement installs command. If you withdraw your attention but give it nowhere else to go, the old pattern will pull it back. Real detachment is not an empty void. It is reassigned authority. The stronger question is not only, should I respond? The stronger question is, where does my attention go now? If the answer is nowhere, the situation may still own you. If the answer is your body, your work, your craft, your money, your order, your mission, then detachment begins to become real. Remember this: if your silence is waiting to be noticed, it is not power. It is performance. And performance cannot protect you for long. Eventually, pressure finds the gap. Resentment leaks. Obsession returns. The same pattern enters again under another name. That is why the next layer cannot be more willpower, more coldness, or more delay. The next layer has to be architecture. Because if you rely on mood to protect your gates, the gates will open the moment your mood changes. You need an operating system. Once fake detachment is exposed, The next question becomes practical. How do you build discipline that does not collapse the moment your mood changes? Because this is where most people fail. They understand the doctrine. They agree with it. They feel the truth of it while they are listening. But the next morning arrives, and the body is tired. The weather is gray. The phone is close. The mind is noisy. And the first message of the day arrives wearing the costume of importance. Suddenly, all that cold clarity disappears. The old pattern walks back in. Why? Because they were relying on a feeling to protect the gate. They did not have architecture. They had intensity. They had a powerful moment. They had a private speech where they promised themselves they would be different. But a powerful moment is not a system. A promise made in a strong mood cannot be trusted to survive a weak mood. Discipline cannot survive if it has to be renegotiated every morning. This is the fatal flaw of the amateur. They wake up and ask, "Do I feel focused today?" That question is already a leak. Because if your discipline needs permission from your mood is sitting above your mission. A serious person does not build command that way. They do not wait to feel like the version of themselves who can execute. They build a structure that executes before feeling gets a vote. Look at the pattern. Monday arrives. The person feels sharp. They train. They work. They ignore distractions. They feel clean, controlled, almost dangerous. Then Wednesday comes. Sleep is weaker. Energy is lower. A message creates friction. Work feels heavier. The body wants comfort. The mind starts negotiating. I will just check this one thing. I will start after I clear my head. I will respond quickly and get it out of the way. I deserve a short break. This is where the collapse begins. Not because the person lacks potential, because their discipline was depending on favorable weather. If your discipline needs a good mood, it is not discipline. It is cooperation from the weather. The hidden mechanism is decision fatigue. Every time you have to decide whether to focus, whether to train, whether to respond, whether to check the phone, whether to protect your morning, whether to give someone access, you are spending command before the real work even begins. Every repeated decision becomes a small courtroom, and every courtroom gives weakness a chance to hire a lawyer. This is why serious discipline is not built by winning endless inner debates. It is built by removing unnecessary debates from the system. A real operating system does not wake up and ask, "How do I feel about running this program today?" It runs because the code is already installed. It has rules, sequences, permissions, restrictions, defaults, firewalls. It does not need emotional inspiration to function. The same thing has to exist inside you, not a fantasy version, not a rigid prison, a working structure. Your first hour needs law. The phone does not get access before your mission gets access. Your body receives movement before the outside world receives reaction. Your work gets the first clean block of attention before random signals get to scratch at the door. Messages are checked in windows, not whenever anxiety knocks. Serious work receives protected blocks. Social media does not enter during execution. Emotional conversations are not handled when the body is tired, hungry, angry, lonely, or unstable. Criticism is processed after delay. Major decisions are not made inside an emotional spike. These are not productivity hacks. They are access laws. The difference matters. A productivity hack is something you try when you feel motivated. An access law is something that protects you when motivation is gone. Without laws, everything becomes case by case. And case by case sounds flexible, but for an undisciplined person, it becomes a factory of loopholes. Today is different. This message matters. This person needs an answer. This time, it is urgent. This will only take 10 seconds. That is how weakness enters wearing reasonable language. It does not always arrive as laziness. Sometimes it arrives as logic. Sometimes it arrives as concern. Sometimes it arrives as responsibility. And if your structure is not already decided, the argument will sound convincing. So the correction is clear. You pre-decide while calm what you will obey under pressure. You decide what gets access to the first hour. You decide when messages are answered. You decide what kind of conversation deserves immediate response and what kind gets delay. You decide which emotional states disqualify you from making major decisions. You decide which platforms are not allowed near your execution blocks. You decide which people no longer get access to your inner life just because they know how to create tension. Then, when pressure arrives, you do not reopen the entire case. You follow the architecture. Picture the difference. The undisciplined person sits down to work and asks, "Do I feel ready?" The disciplined person sits down and begins the block. The undisciplined person sees a message and asks, "What if I need to answer?" The disciplined person already has a response window. The undisciplined person feels anxiety and treats it like instruction. The disciplined person treats anxiety like weather passing over structure. The structure does not remove every feeling. It simply prevents feeling from becoming command. That is when discipline becomes real, not when the mind is peaceful. When the structure holds while the mind is noisy. This is what most people never understand. They think discipline should feel heroic. It should not. Hero mode is expensive. It burns hot, collapses fast, and usually needs applause to continue. A system is quieter. It does not impress the ego as much. It does not give you the same dramatic rush, but it compounds. It turns execution from a personality trait into an environment. It makes the right action easier to repeat and the wrong action harder to enter. That is real leverage. Machiavelli would understand this as governance. A ruler cannot improvise every law in the middle of a crisis. The law must exist before the crisis. The chain of command must exist before the invasion. The gate protocol must exist before the envoy arrives. Otherwise, every pressure event becomes a constitutional emergency. The same is true inside you. If you only become disciplined after chaos begins, you are already late. You cannot wait until the phone is glowing. The accusation is sitting in your chest. The comparison is burning in your head, and the body is begging for relief. By then, pressure has already entered the room. The system must be built before the breach. Remember this: discipline is not the ability to fight yourself forever. Discipline is the ability to design a life where fewer parts of you need to be fought. But even a strong operating system has one final vulnerability. You can protect your first hour. You can create response windows. You can delay emotional decisions. You can build execution blocks. But if you still believe everyone deserves equal access to you, the system will eventually break. Because discipline is not only about what you do, it is also about who is allowed near the controls. That is why the next layer is the Gatekeeper protocol. A strong operating system protects your discipline from mood. But the Gatekeeper protocol protects your entire life from unauthorized access. This is where the doctrine becomes real. Because you can have routines, work blocks, response windows, and rules for your first hour. But if the wrong people still have unlimited access to your attention, your system will eventually collapse. Not all access is equal. Not everyone deserves the same doorway. Not every message deserves the same speed. Not every person who knows your name has earned the right to enter your mind. This is where many serious people lose power without noticing it. They confuse availability with virtue. They think being reachable means being responsible. They think explaining themselves means being mature. They think giving everyone a response means they are being fair. But over-availability is one of the quietest forms of status loss. If everyone can reach you, interrupt you, rush you, question you, drain you, and pull explanations out of you whenever they want, your presence becomes common, not because you lack value, because you have failed to create a structure that teaches people how your value must be approached. This does not mean becoming cold toward everyone. That is another amateur mistake. Controlled access is not isolation. It is hierarchy. It means you stop treating every knock on the door as if it deserves the same level of attention. A serious person knows the difference between duty and noise, between a real obligation and emotional pressure, between someone who has earned access and someone who is using familiarity as a key. Picture a person trying to build something important. Their time is limited. Their focus matters. They know the mission is real, but throughout the day they keep giving pieces of themselves away. A message from someone who only appears during chaos. A casual opinion from someone who never takes responsibility. A family demand wrapped in guilt. A coworker who asks questions not to understand, but to destabilize. A social feed that leaves the mind comparing instead of creating. By the end of the day, everyone has received a piece of them, except the future they claim to be building. That is not kindness, that is leakage. And this is not only a male problem. A high-agency woman can face the same mechanism in a different costume. She sets a boundary, and people demand warmth with it. She delays a reply, and someone reads attitude into it. She protects her energy, and someone calls it cold. The mechanism is the same. Social pressure tries to turn access into entitlement. The correction is classification. You need a hierarchy of access. First, immediate access. These are the things tied to real responsibility. Health, physical training, family duties that are actually yours, serious commitments, money, mission-critical work, and genuine emergencies. These do not get ignored in the name of detachment. Real discipline does not abandon responsibility. It protects it. Second, delayed access. This is where most of the world belongs. Most messages, most opinions, most invitations, most minor criticisms, most emotional conversations, most requests that feel loud but are not truly urgent. These may deserve a response, but they do not deserve control over your timing. They wait in the lobby. Third, restricted access. These are the people, platforms, and situations that repeatedly drain your command. The person who only reaches out when they bring chaos. The feed that leaves you comparing your life to strangers. The relative who turns every conversation into a guilt trial. The coworker who hides destabilization inside innocent questions. These do not get unlimited entry anymore. You do not need a dramatic speech. You do not need a final performance. You simply restrict the doorway. Less access, less explanation, less emotional bandwidth. Fourth, no access. This is reserved for repeated disrespect, manipulative urgency, empty provocation, and patterns that only exist to fracture your command. No access does not always mean a public exile. Sometimes it means silence. Sometimes it means muting. Sometimes it means not explaining. Sometimes it means letting the door remain closed without making a speech at the gate. This is not cruelty. This is classification. The undisciplined person asks, "How do I feel about this?" The governed person asks, "What category does this belong to?" That single question changes everything. A message arrives. Before your nervous system takes over, you classify it. Is this urgent, or is it only uncomfortable? Is this useful, or just loud? Is this duty, or pressure? Is this a person who has earned access, or someone trying to use history as a key? Is this a real problem, or bait wearing the costume of importance? Classification kills panic because it stops every signal from pretending to be equal. Modern life breaks people by making everything knock at once. Everything wants entry. Everything says, "Look at me now." But if everything can enter, nothing sacred can remain protected. Your attention has a gate. Your emotion has a gate. Your time has a gate. Your explanations have a gate. Your discipline has a structure. Your access has a cost. This is not coldness. This is order. And once order exists, your life stops being a public hallway. It becomes a controlled room. People can still knock. Pressure can still arrive. Disrespect can still test the handle. But not everything gets inside. That is the identity upgrade. You stop being a person who reacts to whatever arrives. You become the person who governs entry. You stop fearing that boundaries will make you disliked. You understand that anyone who resents your structure was probably benefiting from your lack of one. But the moral center matters. Controlled access can become paranoia if you lose clarity. The goal is not to suspect everyone. The goal is to select cleanly. The goal is not to live behind walls. The goal is to decide who deserves immediacy, who deserves delay, who deserves distance, and who deserves nothing. Machiavelli's lesson here is not isolation. A ruler cut off from all information becomes blind, but a ruler available to every voice becomes weak. The art is controlled counsel, controlled entry, controlled influence. The gate is not sealed forever. It is guarded. Remember this: access is respect made visible. And from this point forward, the final question is no longer, how do I become untouchable? The final question is much sharper. What parts of yourself have you been giving away too cheaply? Because the answer to that question is where your real command begins. This brings us to the final reversal. You were taught to think discipline means adding more force, more motivation, more intensity, more pressure on yourself, more proof that you are serious. But the deeper truth is colder than that. Real discipline is not only about what you force yourself to do, it is about what you stop allowing to enter. You do not become focused by fighting every distraction in a panic. You become focused by removing the right of distraction to approach you without cost. You do not become detached by pretending you feel nothing. You become detached when the wrong people, the wrong signals, the wrong memories, and the wrong pressures lose jurisdiction over your nervous system. You do not become disciplined by waiting for the perfect mood. You become disciplined when your system functions even while your mood protests. That is the doctrine. Your attention is territory. Your emotion is a gate. Your timing is command. Your discipline is architecture. Your access is status. And if you refuse to govern these things, the world will govern them for you. Look around. Most people spend their lives reacting to whatever arrives. A message arrives, they answer. A criticism appears, they defend. A delay happens, they chase. A comparison enters, they collapse. A demand shows up, they explain. A pressure lands in the room, they move. They call it being responsible. They call it being aware. They call it being nice. But underneath that polite language, something far more expensive is happening. They are being accessed. Piece by piece, their future is being negotiated away by things that never deserved a seat at the table. This is why the person who looks busy is not always disciplined. Sometimes they are just constantly occupied. This is why the person who looks calm is not always detached. Sometimes they are only hiding the obsession better. This is why the person who responds quickly is not always strong. Sometimes they simply cannot sit with pressure. Real command is quieter. It does not need to announce itself every hour. It does not need to punish people with silence. It does not need to explain every boundary until the boundary becomes weak. It knows what deserves access, what deserves delay, what deserves distance, and what deserves nothing. That is how you become difficult to control, not by becoming cruel, not by becoming paranoid, not by turning life into a battlefield, but by becoming unavailable to the forces that used to rent your nervous system for free. The person who guards attention begins to recover the future. The person who controls timing begins to recover leverage. The person who stops performing detachment and starts redirecting attention into execution begins to recover command. And once command returns, the entire game changes. You stop waking up as public property. You stop letting random signals set the tone of your day. You stop explaining decisions to people who only wanted openings. You stop allowing urgency to disguise itself as importance. You stop mistaking emotional noise for obligation. Your life becomes cleaner because the gates are finally guarded. So from this point forward, the correction is simple. Guard the gates, price your attention, delay your reaction, build the operating system, classify the signal, protect the work. Let results become the only explanation that matters. And if this doctrine hits something real in you, leave this exact declaration in the comments. I move by command, not by pressure, not by panic, not by provocation, not by the desperate need to be understood by people who benefit from misunderstanding you, by command. If this video gave you a sharper way to understand focus, detachment, discipline, and controlled access, support the channel in the same spirit. Like the video so this reaches people who are still losing their future to small interruptions. Subscribe if you want more cold, strategic lessons on power, perception, emotional sovereignty, and self-command. This channel is not built for noise. It is built for leverage. And remember the fundamental law. The world cannot occupy a person who has finally learned to guard their own gates.